Headings, styles, and for larger documents, tables of contents are essential structures to help you build Word files that are better for everyone. And these structures are also key to help make your documents conform to accessibility standards for conformance with standards like WCAG 2 or WCAG 2.1. I'm David Berman, and today I'll be demonstrating for you how to properly create headings using styles, and optionally then use those headings to automatically create a perfect table of contents in your Word files, whether you're on Windows or on Mac OS, and any version of Word. However, today I'll be showing a sample file that's not yet accessible in the latest Word 365 for Windows. But the techniques I'm showing work equally well at all versions of Word on Windows or Mac OS. Now I'm going to describe as I go, so you can learn what you need just by listening or reading the captions. So I'm showing on my screen very broken, very inaccessible Word file, and on page 1, the largest type looks like the biggest heading on the page. It's worded Staff Report on 123 Main Street. And there's other things that look like headings. Property description, site plan proposal. However, if I pull up the accessibility checker in Word, which I get to by choosing the review ribbon and then choose check accessibility, in the accessibility pane, amongst other errors and warnings we see on this list is a tip. And the tip pronounces no headings in document. So although we've got the look of headings, so for a sighted user, it looks like there's headings here because there's words that are bigger and bolder. In fact, there are no technical headings in this document. There are no semantic headings. And indeed, the accessibility checker is suggesting that in this document, if we want to fix this problem, the place to start would be to review the document navigation. So I'm going to select this option, this recommended action of review document navigation. Now this causes the navigation panel to appear in my Word for Windows. In this case, it's come up on the left side. And indeed, under the list where there would be headings, there are no headings. So what's going on here? Let's take a look at, for example, this heading that's halfway down the page. That is the phrase property description. It sure looks like a heading. So I'm going to open up the styles panel. Control-Shift-Alt-S, and brings up styles. And so now the styles panel has appeared, and it looks like the style for this phrase property description is a style called header. Header, not heading. And this is a common error. Now, header refers to the header, as in header or footer at the top or bottom of a page. But we don't want a header, we want a heading. Now in Word, we're allowed up to 9 levels of headings. And it starts with heading level 1. Heading 1 is typically there's only one heading 1 in a document. It is the main name of the document. And so in this case, I would think Staff Report on 123 Main Street. The largest type on the page should be my heading 1. And yet again, the styles is not showing headings. So, hey, where are my heading styles? So I'm looking down the list of headings. Sorry, I'm looking down the list of styles. I don't see any styles that are called heading. Now this is puzzling until we realize, wait a moment. When we're dealing with styles, it's very important to check the options button in the styles pane. And the first thing in the style pane options is something called select styles to show. Now right now the select styles to show for this document is set to in use, which is often a good choice because it makes it easier to use your styles pane if there's less things on the list, and so it's limiting it to only those in use. However, in this case, we need to use some styles that aren't currently used that we really need. And so I'm going to pull down this menu and choose, there's recommended, never a good choice. That's Microsoft deciding what's good for you. But instead, I'm going to choose for now all styles. So all the styles are going to appear once I select the OK button in the style pane options. And indeed, you may have noticed if you're watching, the styles list flickered. And now when I scroll down under the letter H, heading 1, heading 2, heading 3, heading 4, heading 5, etc. So there's my heading styles waiting to go. And indeed, every Word file has certain styles defaulted in them, and you can't even delete them. That's the normal style, the heading styles. And so in order to apply heading 1 to our first heading, the staff report on 123 Main Street, all I have to do is highlight the phrase and then select heading 1 from the styles menu, which I'm doing right now. And now that heading is heading 1. And we can know this anytime we select any part of this heading. I can just put my cursor anywhere in staff report on 123 Main Street, and it shows heading 1 as the highlighted style in the styles menu. Now you may have noticed the look of the heading 1 changed. It went before my style. The look of this heading 1 was bold and it was black type. Now it's thinner type and it's bluish. So now that's fine. If we want it to be black and we want it to be bold, we can simply modify the look of heading 1 by choosing the heading 1 on the styles menu. I choose modify, and under the format button, the very bottom here, format button, I select it and I can choose font off this menu. And up comes the font window. And this is the exact same font window that appears if you weren't using styles. So in a style, we can design a style that has all of the settings, all of the properties we prefer for font, for paragraph, etc. But it's in the style now. And so in this font window, I'm going to change the font style from regular to bold. I'm going to change the color from this, whatever this color is, I'm not so good at color, to black. And now the preview is showing, for those who can see it, it shows the staff report on 123 Main Street. This is what it will look like. It's back to thick and black. And so I'm going to select OK. And although it still looks blue and not bold in the document, as soon as I select OK on the Modify Style window, heading 1 has now been modified. And so I can get the exact same look I wanted before, but now it's embedded in the style. Now, that may not seem that valuable for just heading 1, because you typically only have one heading 1 in a document. But let's look at the next level of headings, the next level of importance. So heading 1 is the most important headings. Heading 2 is the next important. Heading 3 would be even of less importance. So the property description, which again looks like a heading, when I highlight it, we can see in the style, if we can see the styles menu, it's again showing as header. So instead, we want to designate property description as a heading 2 now. So I'm going to now go to the styles menu, find heading 2 on the list. I select heading 2, and now property description is indeed showing up as a heading 2. And if I continue down the document, I can, there's another, so I found another heading that looks to me like it ought to also be a heading 2, site plan proposal. So I'm highlighting it. I'm going to select heading 2 as well. And on I go. Here's another thing that looks like it would be a heading. Now, in this case, whoever designed this document chose to use underlining for emphasis. Now, underlining, really poor choice for emphasis. I encourage people to, let's keep underlines just to indicate hypertext links, because for a sighted user that sees that underline, they're going to maybe think that if they click on that link or they select that link, that it'll take us somewhere. And indeed, that's the global understanding of what underlining looks like. Back in the days of Underwood typewriters in the 1970s, let's say, or 1980s, we were still using underlining as a form of emphasis because there weren't very many choices. But nowadays, let's not use underlining for emphasis. So instead, I'm going to designate this one as heading 3. And so I'm going to go find my heading 3 on the list of styles. And poof, now it's got a different look, because the heading 3 look is this color, this typeface, and I don't even have to bother taking the underline out because there was no underlining in the look of the style. So now I have chosen heading 1, heading 2, heading 3, and they are designated. And in fact, now if we go back to the accessibility checker, we can, before you may recall that there was a tip telling us that this document has no headings, but now that tip is gone because the document has some headings. Now, example of where the accessibility checker isn't so perfect because, well, the accessibility checker doesn't realize that there's many more headings. There could be another 100 headings that need someone to go through and mark them as proper headings, but at least the accessibility checker helped us a little bit. And now if we look at if we can see our navigation pane on the left side of the window, now rather than the headings list being blank, there's now a number of headings showing in the list. Now, one of these headings has nothing in it. What's that about? Well, that's what we call an empty heading, and that's definitely an accessibility failure. So I'm deleting that extra line space, and now we don't have an empty heading. That is a blank space, which is marked as a heading. So now I've got 4 headings. And indeed, at this point, we could create ourselves a table of contents based on our heading structure, and which is really easy to do. Now, if a document is short, there's no need for a table of contents. We usually suggest maybe we should have a table of contents when documents are maybe over 20 pages long. And so let's insert a table of contents into our document, which is now comes to us for free because we have a proper heading structure. In this case, we have level 1, level 2, and level 3. So at the top of this document, it starts off with its title and its author, the town of Trillium. So I'm thinking if we're going to have a table of contents, maybe it'll start on its own page. It'll be, let's say, page 2 of the document. So first of all, I'm going to put it on a page break. I get that by pressing Control-Enter on my keyboard. And now I'm going to insert a table of contents on the now blank page 2, well, at the top of page 2. I'll put another page break below where I'm going to put my table of contents. So the document's now the rest of the content is going to start on page 3, but on page 2, that's where we're going to insert our table of contents. And the way we do that is simply like this. We go to the References ribbon, and on the References ribbon, the first command in the ribbon is called Table of Contents. I pull down those choices, and I'm offered a number of automatic styles for table of contents. And I can choose the automatic table of contents 1, the automatic 2, or I could create a manual table of contents. I could design my own table of contents. Right now, I'm just going to choose automatic table 2, and poof, here it is. All of the headings in our navigation structure can now be seen in the table of contents. On page 2, it starts off with the phrase table of contents, which was put in for us automatically. And again, you can modify what wording appears. However, we now have a level 1 heading level 1 heading, 2 heading level 2s, and 1 heading level 3, because those are the ones we designated. Now, let's say we were to go and add a 4th heading. I'm going to scroll down looking for the next heading or anything that would work well as a heading. And well, here's one, water capacity allocation, in the middle of page 4. So I'm going to highlight that. And I think that also deserves to be a heading 3. So I'm going to go find heading 3. Now, you may be thinking, gee, having to scroll up and down on those styles, that's a lot of work. Well, let's simplify it for ourselves. So I'm going to go back to that options button earlier when I changed select styles to show. You may recall before I made it all styles, but we don't need all the styles now. So we can go back to just the ones that are in use. So I'm selecting in use and I select OK, and that shortens up the list. And indeed, there's many other styles that could be removed from here that aren't really necessary. But there's our heading 1, heading 2, and heading 3 available. As well, on the home ribbon, there's also a styles button, and you can arrange your ribbon so that the top styles will also appear there. In fact, if I stretch my window wider, as soon as there's enough room, Word starts showing me my favorite styles in the ribbon. So if I keep stretching and stretching and stretching, there's heading 1, heading 2 and heading 3, showing, including what they look like. And so, for example, now I want to make water capacity allocation a heading 3. I can select it from the styles menu, but I can also select it from the ribbon. So I'm clicking my mouse on heading 3 and poof, now it also has the style of a heading 3. If I want it to be a heading 2, I can make it a heading 2, just like that. And now it's showing up as the 5th heading over on my navigation bar. So you'd figure now that we would now see it in our table of contents. So I'm going to scroll back up to the top and get to page 2. But wait, our table of contents only still has 4 headings in it. What's that about? Isn't that strange? You'd think that Word would be clever enough to automatically update the table of contents as soon as we add a new heading. But the inconvenient truth is you have to tell Word to update the table of contents when you've made changes that would affect it. The way we do that is when we highlight the table of contents, an option appears called Update Table. And when I select the Update Table option, I can also get to that from the References ribbon, but it's kind of handy here for mouse users. I can choose Update Table. And when I select Update Table, we now get a window that says Word is updating the table of contents. Select one of the following options. You get 2 choices. The first choice, Update Page Numbers Only, is only going to update the page numbers if they've changed, because maybe you know you didn't change any headings or structure of the document, but you do know you've been perhaps adding content that would change the page numbers. So you could do that. However, what we want to do is the second of these 2 choices, which is Update Entire Table. When I update the entire table, it will reflect any changes we made in adding or removing headings, as well as update the page numbers. And so I'm choosing Update Entire Table radio button. I'm selecting OK, and poof, now our table of contents has 5 headings in it rather than just 4. So there you go. So we've learned the importance of headings, how to make them technically correct rather than just look correct, how to build them in styles, and the power of styles. If we want to change the look of 100 heading level 2s in a whole document, rather than going through each one by hand, and let's say changing its typeface or its color, we just have to make one change in the style itself, in the heading 2 style in that case. And finally, we can very quickly generate and update an automatically generated table of contents. So that's as deep as I'm going to go in this lesson. However, there's so much more you can do with these structures, and there's nothing we can't style. We can get accessibility with no trade-offs for your typical audience. If you do want to go deeper, ask us questions, contact us at wcag2.com, wcag2.com, or contact us just to learn how to go way deeper. And thanks for listening. See you next time.